Hi, my name is Varun Nagarajan, and I'm a Founder's Journey student at HBS this fall. I'm here to talk to you today about goal setting, its dangers, with a special focus on entrepreneurship. I want to do that by starting off talking about the merits of setting goals, how it can be beneficial, and why people recommend setting long-term as well as short-term goals. Next, I want to tell you a story about how setting goals has gone wrong. I want to then continue talking about what makes setting goals dangerous, and lastly, end with specific actions you can take to ensure that setting goals is successful while starting a venture. I have set goals throughout my life, for my personal life, for my academic career, as well as my professional career. And you can't talk about the dangers of goal setting without acknowledging the benefits. So let's start with that. First off, there is no doubt that there is a positive linear relationship between setting goals, and task performance. There was numerous studies that are compiled by a Harvard Business School paper by professors Ordonez, Schweitzer, Galinsky, and Bazerman that looked at hundreds of experiments, dozens of tasks, and several thousand participants all around the world that show that compared to vague and easy goals that say, do your best, specific and challenging goals boost performance. Goals provide a metric for success, and knowing your goal is integral to the strategy of a company. There were specific studies that were done by Locke, Latham, Smith, and Wood in 1990 that actually showed the positive linear relationship between the difficulty of the goals and the performance of individual tasks within companies. This is also relatively intuitive. Without goals, you wouldn't have child prodigies such as Britney Spears, who started practice for dancing and singing at the age of 5 and 6, or you wouldn't have world-class athletes such as Serena Williams and Venus Williams, who at a very young age, as little girls, had the goal to be some of the best tennis players in the whole world. Now, in an entrepreneurial context, goals are especially necessary for things such as maintaining cash flow, maintaining investor relationships, raising funds and pitching VCs, ensuring operations of your company are smooth, as well as maintaining culture in your company. And having a focus on creating growth is also a goal. Nonetheless, as busy as your early years in entrepreneurship, as a founder, you kind of owe it to yourself as well as your employees and your business to establish goals that are specific, both short and long term. So what could go wrong while setting goals? Let's take the case of the CEO of Ford Motor Company, Lee, while setting goals for his company. With the introduction of smaller, more fuel-efficient cars in Europe and the rest of the world, Ford Motor Company saw themselves losing market share. For that reason, Lee set a goal for his company and a few teams under him to create a car that was under 2,000 pounds, under $2,000, and ready for production by 1970. Now, this was a highly ambitious goal with an extremely tight deadline. But the executives of Ford were set in motion to work with their teams to achieve this goal. They came out with the Ford Pinto. Now, because the deadline was extremely tight, managers were signing off on unperformed safety checks, including a particular one that considered the fuel tank being at the rear of the car being only 10 inches away from the very end point. Now, what that resulted in was a possibility of the Ford Pinto igniting in flames when there was a rear end collision. Now, this led the Ford executives to perform a cost-benefit analysis on whether it was cheaper to repair the car or pay for potential lawsuits. Now, the cost to repair the car was only $11 per car. And the way they calculated how much they would pay for lawsuits was based on an estimation of how many incidents the Ford Pinto would go up in flames. The decision they came up with was to save money on repairing the car, and they elected not to repair the car and potentially pay for any lawsuits. This decision resulted in 50 to 180 deaths and several hundred injuries. Needless to say, this was a disastrous decision that only factored in things like urgency, speed to market, fuel efficiency, and cost, and not factors such as ethical behavior, safety, or company reputation. Now, with that example at Ford Motor Company, there were a number of reasons why those goals led to disastrous failure. We'll look at those in a minute. However, a narrow focus such as that one neglects the non-goal areas, such as the ones I described. And it also distorts the risk preferences. It also leads to a possibility of unethical behavior, like we saw. It leads to inhibited learning. It also could lead to the disruption of culture at an organization because you're focused on a specific set of goals. And it could also reduce motivation at the company. Now, the study that was in the Harvard Business School paper by professors Ordonez, Schweitzer, Galinsky, and Bazerman did an interesting comparison to goals as a prescription strength medication, which actually requires careful dosing, but has been prescribed to every instance, such as your personal life and every company, and is being taken by pretty much every entity without regard for its harmful side effects. Now, the professors mentioned these specific side effects associated with goal setting, including the narrow focus, the unethical behavior, the risk preferences, the culture eruption, as well as treatment of people, such as managers, that we need to conceptualize. Now, with the careful dosing, you could solve for the factors of the goals being too specific, too stressful, or even overdosing on this medication that these professors call goal setting. After all, as a founder, the world of entrepreneurship revolves around things such as autonomy, independence, and avoiding things such as rigidity and doing things the way that's already being done, and asking, why do we have to do it that way? And this being the core idea of founding something leads to setting goals in a way that hasn't been done before, with things in mind such as core values, your passion for why you started the venture, as well as a culture that you want to implement within the company that you're founding. Now, while those are great things to keep in mind in the process of goal setting as a founder and entrepreneur, what can we do to make sure that individual goals that we set are appropriate for the company as well as the team? Now, let's look at specific pitfalls to avoid while setting goals. Now, having a goal be too specific can be an issue. We saw the example of the Ford Motor Company. There's also several examples such as Wells Fargo's incentives that led to the scandal. There's the case of Enron that also had goals being focused on revenue instead of profit, goals being too narrow. And as I mentioned before, in the world of entrepreneurship, setting a goal can lead to guardrails being placed and the idea not being looked at in several different perspectives like it needs to when a problem needs to be fixed. Too many goals being set can be also an issue for the team to focus on, especially in a fast-moving pace like an early-stage company. Another important factor in an early-stage venture is time horizon. Having an inappropriate time horizon can cause a new venture's employees to align with the wrong incentives and be motivated to take actions that are not in line with the long-term incentives of the company. Having too challenging goals can also demotivate the team and inhibit learning amongst the employees. In conclusion, avoiding the pitfalls that were mentioned while creating goals leads us to advocate for a new generation of setting goals in a new venture that can identify the long-term objectives and keeping in mind that goal setting can be dangerous, which allows us to carefully balance the inspirations and the effects of setting goals. Thank you.